You're listening to Ecto Portal, a journey into the unknown with Anthony Anderson and Verna Wilson.
I hope that you are seated comfortably with the light turned down and the curtains drawn.
Somebody there?
Hello and welcome again to Ecto Portal. You know, on this week's show, if you're having trouble with your parents and maybe you're not getting along and maybe you should sit down and, talk it out at the dinner table or ask your priest or, your parishioner or, minister in your town to maybe work things out. It might be an alternative to what tonight's woman did. Yes, it's the haunting of Lizzie Borden. Everybody knows the nursery rhyme, but we're going to explore the real story. I'm Anthony Anderson, your host, and I'm here with my co-host,
Verna Wilson.
And
your news lady, Linda Walker.
That's right. And we're going to explore Lizzie Borden. Did she do it? Did she not do it? Does she haunt the house that still resides in Connecticut? I guess maybe we can find out.
Lots of questions. It was a crazy case.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
It is
very
crazy
court case, yeah.
Bloody.
Bloody, bloody, bloody.
Yeah, but it's funny because you think about this nursery rhyme and the accuracy, and it's not totally correct.
The rhyme is not accurate.
But there's other nursery rhymes, too, that take stuff out of context and kind of...
Oh, of course.
So
yeah.
It kind of reminded me, it's kind of in good company, though, with other nursery rhymes of the day that...
Sure.
Like Ring Around the Posy.
Oh, yeah, about the plague.
Yep, about the plague.
Yeah.
So...
Old King Cole about Henry VIII.
Exactly. Exactly. And I was wrong. It wasn't in Connecticut. It's in Fall River, Massachusetts.
That's what I thought. When you said Connecticut, I went,
Everything's Connecticut.
I know.
Massachusetts to me on the East Coast. At 97 2nd Street in Fall River, Massachusetts. So essentially, it started with the maid, Maggie Sullivan, who awoke at 11 a.m. And can I just say, what in the hell maid sleeps until 11 a.m.?
Especially in those times.
I think that's the root of our real problem here. I'm just saying. I had to point that out when I read that.
Yeah, in those times, they didn't wake up at 11 a.m.
Her ass is up at 4:30
in the morning
and want the laundry started.
And
she had a lot of work to
get
do.
everything ready for the family.
And then as soon as the family gets up, then you make the beds.
Right.
Girl, half your day is over by the time it's 10 o'clock.
It's true. Back then, yeah.
So the fact that you're sleeping until 11, you have it nice.
Well, maybe she had a day off, and she did sleep at 11.
She didn't have the day off.
Did they say what day it was? Was it on a Monday, Tuesday?
August 4th, 1892. You have to go home and do the calendar math.
Yeah.
So if anybody out there knows when August 4th, 1892 was,
I can look, but
let us know.
Right.
Anyway, she awoke to the cry of Lizzie Borden screaming, Maggie, come quick, my father's been murdered. My parents have been murdered. And they found both the mother and the father murdered, but...
They were murdered separately, right?
Separately,
In
yeah.
fact, the mother, Abby, was killed in her room, and then 90 minutes later, the father was killed. Her body was cold already, and his body was warm. But there was like a 90-minute span, I guess. I don't know how they figured that out then, but they did. Fall River newspaper said, shocking crime, a venerable citizen and his aged wife hacked to pieces in their home. The news of the Borden murder spread like wildfire. Hundreds poured into 2nd Street. And I realize whenever I read articles like in San Francisco back in the day, when something happens, there's hundreds of people poured into the street. Well, there's no TV, there's no video games.
No, people were very shocked.
They were, but they
were,
I mean,
yeah.
the only way you found out about something,
Is if you
were there
when they
or talked to someone who was there, or
Or
they
if you saw
they-
the police come by the house.
maybe.
right, or the newsboys would announce it because they would get the presses, the papers,
Exactly.
the press. Yeah,
But nowadays, hundreds don't pour into the street when someone's been murdered next door. Usually their doors are locked, their window shades are pulled, and they're praying to God it's not their house.
right, exactly.
That's the difference between then and now.
and I think people still get shocked by hearing about axe murders and stuff. Of course they do.
Yeah, because it's like, how could this possibly happen under my nose?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
this small town in Massachusetts, I mean, her father was an upstanding citizen in the town.
Right.
They lived in a small, moderate house, but still, I think he did it on purpose, not to flaunt his money or his wealth.
Right.
And then this happens. And they said that Lizzie didn't really get along with her stepmother. And
No, she didn't get along with her father either.
No, she did. She loved
Oh,
her
no,
father.
that's right. She
worshipped
loved her
father.
dad, but she couldn't stand her stepmother.
But people say that
That's
they
right.
never spoke. They actually had a relationship where they didn't speak to each other. But others claim, no, they spoke all the time. So there were conflicting stories about their relationship.
right.
And her sister, of course, was gone during the murders, so that's why she wasn't a suspect.
Where was she at 11 o'clock in the morning?
Well, she wasn't home. She was out of town somewhere else.
Oh, okay.
So once the police got involved, they visited the crime scene, and the coroner, who had been in the Civil War, a Civil War doctor, said it was just vile and disgusting, the worst thing he'd ever seen. Mm-hmm. And this is a man who saw Civil War
And that was pretty gross.
soldiers
Yeah.
wounded.
Must have been pretty bloody and yuck.
Exactly. So he said it's absolutely the most appalling thing I've ever seen. And I guess the coroner did, tests, and they said, well, Mrs. Borden must have been attacked by a tall man from behind. And another theory was, no, only a woman who's scorned and out of her mind could hack that much. I don't know where they get their logic for that one, but, there you go. They did, okay, this is interesting about the questioning. They discussed, let's see. A Portuguese laborer had visited the home earlier in the morning and asked for his wages that were due to him, only to be told by Andrew Borden, the father, that he had no money and to come back later. The story added the medical evidence suggested that Abby Borden was killed by a tall man, struck the woman from behind. 2 days after the murder, papers began reporting evidence that 33-year-old Lizzie Borden might have had something to do with her parents' murder. Most significantly, Eli Bentz, a clerk at S.R. Smith's drugstore in Fall River, told police that she had visited the store earlier and attempted to purchase prussic acid, a deadly poison. A story in the Boston Globe reported rumors that Lizzie and her stepmother never got along together peacefully, and that for a considerable time back they have not spoken. But the family members said they always spoke. There was never a problem. The Boston Herald said Lizzie is above suspicion. From the consensus of opinion, it can be said, in Lizzie Borden's life, there is not one unmaidenly nor a single deliberately unkind act. So she has her own character in her favor.
Right.
She didn't do anything to anybody before this. Police came to the conclusion the murders had been committed by someone within the Borden home, but were puzzled by the lack of blood anywhere except the bodies of the victims and their inability to uncover any obvious murder weapon. Suspicion turned towards Lizzie. Since her older sister Emma was out of the home at the time of the murders, investigations found it odd that Lizzie knew so little of her mother's whereabouts at 9 a.m. When, according to Lizzie, she had gone upstairs to put on shams on the pillows. They also found her unconvincing her story that during the 15 minutes in which Andrew Borden was murdered in the living room, Lizzie was out in the backyard barn looking for irons, lead sinkers, for the upcoming fishing trip. The barn loft, where she said she had looked, revealed no footprints on the dusty floor, and the stifling heat in the loft seemed likely to discourage anyone from spending more than a few minutes searching for equipment that would not be used for days. Theories about the tall intruder were reconsidered, And one leading physician explained that hacking is almost a positive sign of a deed by a woman who is unconscious of what she is doing. That's the quote. August 9th, the inquest into the murders was held in a courtroom over the police headquarters before criminal magistrate Josiah Blaisdell, district attorney, housed Knowlton questioned Lizzie Borden, Bridget Sullivan, the maid, and household guest John Morse. During her 4 hours of examination, Lizzie gave confused and contradictory answers. 2 days later, the inquest adjourned, and Police Chief Hillard arrested Lizzie Borden. The next day, Lizzie entered a plea of not guilty to the charges of murder and was transported by rail car to the jail in Taunton, 8 miles to the north of Fall River. On August 22nd, Lizzie returned to Fall River courtroom for her preliminary hearing, at the end of which Judge Josiah Bladell pronounced her probably guilty and ordered her to face a grand jury and possible charges of the murder of her parents. In November, the grand jury met. After refusing to issue an indictment, the jury reconvened and heard new evidence from Alice Russell, a family friend who stayed with the two Borden sisters in the days following the murders. Russell told the grand jurors that she had witnessed Lizzie Borden burning a blue dress in the kitchen fire, allegedly because, as Lizzie explained her action, it was covered with old paint. Coupled with the earlier testimony from Bridget Sullivan that Lizzie was wearing a blue dress on the morning of the murders, the evidence was enough to convince grand jurors to indict Lizzie for the murders of her parents. Now, Russell's testimony was also enough to convince the Borden sisters to sever all ties with their old friend forever. So the trial opened on June 5th, 1893 in New Bedford Courthouse before a panel of 3 judges, a high-powered defense team including Andrew Jennings and George Robinson, the former governor of Massachusetts, represented the defendant, while District Attorney Knowlton and Thomas Moody argued the case for prosecution. Before a jury of 12 men, Moody opened the state's case. Moody carelessly threw Lizzie's blue frock on the prosecution table during his speech. It revealed the skulls of Andrew and Abby Borden. The sight of her parents' skulls, according to the newspaper account, caused Lizzie to fall into a faint that lasted for several minutes, sending a thrill of excitement through awestruck spectators, causing unfeigned embarrassment and discomfiture to penetrate the ranks of counsel. For the most of 2 hours, Moody's speech, Lizzie watched from behind a fan as the prosecutor described Lizzie as the only person having both the motive and the opportunity to commit the double murders, and then pulled from a bag the head of the axe that he claimed Lizzie used to kill her parents. So at this point, things don't look really good for Lizzie Borden.
Well, of course not. Buying the poison, burning the dress. I mean,
And then having 2 skulls hanging around the...
Well, no, the skulls were of her parents in the courtroom for the trial to show the drama to the skulls.
to the drama to show where
By the
you
axe.
got the blows.
The blows from the
I
axe.
see. Have you seen the crime pictures?
I have.
I've seen the crime pictures.
So have I.
I
myself.
have them here, actually.
yeah.
And actually, there's something
They're pretty
interesting
gruesome.
about it. They are.
They're
Well,
pretty
yeah, it's
awful.
gruesome. The only thing that that makes me very puzzled about the pictures is usually when somebody gets hacked and has a really heavy blow to the head,
Right.
wouldn't there be blood splattered all over the place?
Well, they said there was blood where it happened, but nowhere else in the house.
That's right. And if you look in the bedroom where her mother is laying face down next to the bed, you can see the mother, dead and everything, but wouldn't you see blood on the walls? I'm sorry. If you're going to whack somebody,
Well, remember,
sometimes
it's a
blood
small. It
just
was a
tends-
small hatchet, though. It wasn't like
wasn't a huge
people
one.
think axe. It really was like a hatchet,
Well, yeah, it was.
and the hand hatchet is a lot smaller. If you're going like this, you're going to get some blood here, but you're not going to splatter the walls.
But there was no blood on the comforter,
That we know of.
on the bedspread, they used to call it. Yeah, it looked clean. It looked.
So
neat.
what do you think it was? Aliens.
Yeah, it could be aliens.
Lizzie Borden.
Yeah,
Her parents were killed
yeah,
by
it could be.
aliens.
I don't know.
You know what I was
it was
wondering?
It was a very clean kill.
It's an Irish maid who sleeps till 11 a.m. Maybe the Irish maid has friends who scouted the place ahead of time by her, saying, "Come get him." you can kill these people and take what you want.
What would be her motive? I mean, they are her employers.
She could claim stupid. They could get away with whatever they could, but nothing was stolen.
See,
This is the crazy
that's the
part.
Thing.
Yeah, that's
It
the
was
crazy
stolen.
That kind of
part,
kills
yeah.
that theory that it was the maid, because if the maid had friends that could sell stuff, it would be gone.
Right.
Now,
She'd be gone, probably.
Now,
Yeah,
and
yeah, she
the
would
only
be.
other motive that if Lizzie would have killed her parents will be for insurance purposes.
right, because she was set
She
to
would
inherit
or
a lot of
inherit
money.
the house
Yeah.
inheritance.
Did they? Well, she inherited his wealth. I don't
She
think.
did.
I don't think life insurance was the thing here.
I don't know if they have life insurance now.
I
I mean,
don't
at the
think
time
they
they
did.
did start life insurance back in those
This is
times.
probably the reasons why life insurance was created.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, he
Yeah.
also had some shady business. I heard he was a businessman that had shady business dealings, and he got people angry, and
Exactly.
they're wondering.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't very. I mean, he was respected, but he wasn't that popular.
he wasn't all that liked. Yeah.
No.
he wasn't liked
and
very
some
well.
people actually considered maybe there was some cases of incest
Yeah.
and abuse.
Oh, the
sexual
incest
abuse.
thing,
Yeah,
And
apparently
that could
he
have been
was-
another theory.
Yeah, I heard he was abusive, emotionally abusive, and
Yeah.
very stern man.
You never know.
Yeah.
Several witnesses testified considering the events on the morning of August 4th, 1892. The most important of these witnesses was 26-year-old Bridget Sullivan, the maid, testified that Lizzie was the only person she saw in the home at the time her parents were murdered. Though she provided some consultation to the defense when she said she had not witnessed, during her over 2 years of service to the family, any signs of ugly relationship between Lizzie and her stepmother. Everything was pleasant, she said. Lizzie and her mother always spoke to each other. Other witnesses disputed Sullivan's assertion that all was fine between Lizzie and her stepmother. For example, Hannah Gifford, who made a garment for Lizzie a few months before the murders, described a conversation in which Lizzie called her stepmother a mean, good-for-nothing thing. Boy, yeah, ooh, knocked me over. And I said, I don't have much to do with her. I stay in my room most of the time. Sullivan also testified that Andrew and Abby Borden experienced stomach pains on the day before the murder and told jurors that at the presumed time of Abby's murder, Borden said she was washing outside windows. She testified that she opened the door for Andrew Borden after he returned home from his walk about town, and he then described hearing Lizzie's cry for help a few minutes after 11 o'clock. Several witnesses described seeing Andrew Borden at various points in town in the 2 hours before he returned home to his death. Household guest John Morse, age 60, said he was having breakfast in the Borden home on the morning of the murders and then left the house to perform chores. The next set of witnesses, of course, described events and conversations after the discovery of the murders. Dr. Seabury Bowen, the Borden family physician, summoned to the house by Lizzie in the late morning, recounted Lizzie's story about looking for lead sinkers in the barn and her contention that her father's troubles with his tenants probably had something to do with the murders. It's interesting that she had a motive ready and offered, that this must be the reason why he was murdered. Cross-examination, Seabury agreed with the defense, suggesting that the morphine he prescribed for Lizzie might account for some of the confused and contradictory testimony that she gave in the inquest following the murders. Adelaide Churchill, a Borden neighbor and another important witness, remembered Lizzie wearing a light blue dress with a diamond figure on it, but did not recall seeing any blood spots on it. John Fleet, the assistant marshal of Fall River, recalled his interview with Lizzie Borden shortly after the murders. Lizzie corrected him. He testified. When he called Abby Borden her mother, "She was not my mother, sir," Lizzie replied. "She was my stepmother. My mother died when I was a child." So she had to make that clear that that's
She had to make clear the relation. But about the maid saying I never saw anything wrong. They're not gonna say anything awful in front of the maid. A lot of people tend to hide bad feelings between themselves in front of
That's true.
somebody
They
who's
send 'em
working
out.
for them. Yeah.
But I would imagine any servant in any house knows what every single person in that house is doing
Absolutely.
at all times.
Oh, she definitely had access to a lot of stuff going on, but it could have been that they acted different around her. I don't know. It's just a thought.
Well, no.
But-
Well, you think about behind closed doors.
No, I
Yeah,
agree. I
you
see
know.
what you're saying.
yeah,
that
and then when they get
would
in the living
dismiss
room,
her or-
yeah, and then when they dismiss her then I can see them arguing, and when she's gone, I can see them.
But it was a pretty small house.
I can see them,
too.
then acting out how they really feel about something.
And
Yeah.
she could be in the hallway cleaning something.
Yeah. And
Right.
you can hear things between.
And actually, that morning that she got, when the reason she was asleep at 11 a.m. is because she was up shortly before cleaning windows, and she was resting after cleaning windows. Is what happened. Yeah.
The decisive moment in the trial might have come when the three-judge panel ruled that Lizzie Borden's inquest testimony, full of contradictions and implausible claims, could not be submitted into evidence by the prosecution. The judges concluded that Lizzie, at the time of the coroner's inquest, was for all practical purposes a prisoner charged with 2 murders, and that her testimony at the inquest, made in the absence of her attorney, was not voluntary. Lizzie should have been warned, the judges said, that she had the right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution to remain silent. The judges rejected the state's argument that Lizzie was only a suspect, not a prisoner, at the time of the inquest, and that anyway her statement should be admitted because it was the nature of denial rather than a confession.
Now, I've heard that that some new evidence has come to light. They actually found the diaries of her of the attorney who tried her court case, and they haven't published them yet, or they haven't brought it out to the public because they're still studying the diaries. But apparently, they said that what they can tell us now is that there is some new evidence that's come to light that didn't come to light before.
Is this the prosecuting attorney or her attorney?
I believe it was her attorney.
It would probably be closer to her, which would make sense.
Right, so they said there is new evidence coming to light, but they don't want to make it public yet until they've thoroughly studied the diaries. So right now, the diaries are being looked over.
Interesting. I wonder
Yeah.
what's inside those diaries.
I know, I'm curious too.
So the jury deliberated an hour and a half before returning its verdict. The clerk asked the foreman of the jury, "What is your verdict?" "Not guilty." The foreman replied simply. Lizzie let out a yell, sank into her chair, rested her hands on a courtroom rail, put her face on her hands, and let out a second cry of joy. Soon, Emma, her counsel, and the courtroom spectators were rushing to congratulate Lizzie. She hid her face in her sister's arms and announced, "Now take me home. I don't want to go to the old place and go at once tonight."
Huh.
I think her and her sister wind up getting another home and
They
wind
do.
up living.
Yeah, they
They
bought
did.
another home, yeah.
Papers praised the jury's verdict. New York Times said, "It will be a certain relief to every right-minded man or woman who has followed the case to learn that the jury at New Bedford has not only acquitted Miss Lizzie Borden of the atrocious crime, but has done so with a promptness that was very significant. It was considered a verdict, a condemnation of the police authorities of Fall River who secured the indictment and have conducted the trial." Yeah, that's interesting. So she's a free woman.
Yeah. Her and her sister
People saw
lived
her
out.
burn the dress. Oh, it was old paint. This is years before forensics. This is years before fingerprinting. I mean, everybody trampled on the crime scene apparently. When they came
Yeah.
in, they took pictures. Everybody came to look. Family members were there.
Yeah.
So it kind of resembles the JonBenet Ramsey crime
Kind
scene.
of, yeah. I thought about, believe it or not, I thought about
Let's
that.
not get into John, but
Yeah. I'm just saying that was a very
It
polluted
does
crime
remind me
scene.
of that, yeah.
yeah, but there
You're
was
right.
forensic back then. I mean, it was just a start of forensics, but it's not
much. Maybe blood type. And
There really wasn't a lot.
Yeah, no, there was.
There was, but not-
as sophisticated.
not
as
as
it is
sophisticated,
today. It was
right.
the
Yeah.
beginnings.
Yeah, it was
of
the beginnings of it. You're right.
After the trial, Lizzie Borden returned to Fall River, where she and her sister Emma purchased an impressive home on the hill, which they called Maplecroft. Lizzie took an interest in theater, frequently attending plays, and often associating with actors, artists, and bohemian types. Emma moved out of Maplecroft in 1905. Lizzie lived in Maplecroft until her death at age 67 in 1927, where she was buried by the graves of her parents in Fall River's Oak Grove Cemetery.
I would love to go and see that.
The Borden home of the place of unsolved crimes was sold to a private family. The house was used as a private family home throughout the years, living with the problem of looky-loos wanting to see the scene of the crime. Since 1948, this home has been in the McGinn family line. When the McGinns inherited the Borden home from a grandmother, they decided to take advantage of the people's curiosity. The McGinns renovated, restored the mansion to look like it did when the Bordens lived there. They set antique furniture up exactly the way it was on that infamous day in August. In 1996, they opened it up as a Lizzie Borden Bread and Breakfast, hoping to get members of the public to pay and stay and look around, finding a way of making a long-time annoyance into a way of making a living. People were ready to spend the night and learn about the murders. The unintended consequence was that this change enticed the restless spirits to enter the living's realm of existence for the first time, making themselves known. So there has been paranormal activity in the house.
There has been.
That's what I
Yeah.
heard.
In the B&B, the Borden home, you can sleep in the master bedroom that belonged to the hacked-up couple, or in the room where the body of Abby Borden, Lizzie's stepmother, was found dead, if you dare. Leanne Wilbur, a proprietor of the B&B, said, "It's not unusual for guests to run out of the inn in fright." Wilbur herself said she had not encountered any full-on ghosts, but has experienced some strange happenings in the house during the 9 years she has owned it. She'll occasionally hear a floor creak above her when no one's upstairs, or notices doors opening and closing. She also smelled a faint floral scent from time to time, but it doesn't unnerve her. "I'm used to picking up them things. They just sort of blend in now. Nothing to drive me out of here. Guests," she said, "are another story. Sometimes I think some come in already worked up about it. It could be something as simple as a light bulb burns out and their mind starts going into overdrive. Some guests scare themselves out of here." Ever the sensitive host, she tries to calm her guests' fears. "I usually tell them if I could live here for 9 years, you can get through one night." In fact, there was a night when Wilbur was too scared to sleep in the house. It was 2004, just after she bought the house. She had nodded off on the couch in the parlor room. And
Wrong place to fall asleep.
Exactly. And awoke at 3 a.m. She peeked down the front entryway and took in the shadows cast by the special old chandelier that was always lit. The chandelier could only turn off if someone got up on a ladder to remove the bulbs. Wilbur said she made sense of all the shadows in the hallway except for one. "As I'm looking at it, it walked up the staircase." So as her mind started to process what she was seeing, the power in the chandelier surged for about 3 seconds. Then everything went black. Every bulb burned out.
Whoa.
That tells you something right there.
She said, "I said to no one in particular, 'You win,' and went to sleep in the car." So she gave up at her own
She's like,
place.
"That's it. I'm out of here."
History buffs are drawn to the house. They get all kinds of visitors from forensic students, lawyers, ghost hunters, self-proclaimed psychics. She even said she can see why paranormal enthusiasts like the house. Living there, she said, very quickly I became a believer. So there's all kinds of manifestations and stuff in the house.
What is that? What is that TV show? I was seeing it for a while about this woman who was a psychic, and her partner was a detective, an ex-New York detective, homicide detective. And
I hate to repeat the name because I hate the show because it's fake. The Dead Files.
The Dead Files. That's it. Okay, so I saw did you see the Lizzie Borden one that they did?
No, I can't watch that show without throwing
Well,
something
I
on
had
my
to see
TV.
it. Well, she claimed the owner of the place, when she told her that about the bedroom that her and her sister shared, and she said that those sisters had something going on. She said, if you know what I mean. She said they had,
Pardon?
she was trying to describe that those two were lovers, that they were exploring each other. That's what she said.
Yeah, that show's crap, but okay.
Yeah, and that's what she said. And the owner, I never forgot the expression on the owner's face, like, what? And she said they had like this thing together, like, exploring with each other. Yeah, exactly. And I was like, what?
Wow.
Well,
okay.
That's just one of the investigators and things I've seen. I've seen so many paranormal shows that have done so many,
There was actually a rumor that from somebody who actually stayed at the hotel, that that if you sleep in Andrew Borden's room, that if you put money on the table, the dressing table,
Yeah.
that he won't haunt the room. But if you don't put money on there, he'll haunt the room and bother you.
But he has money. Why would he need your petty change?
Well, it kind of matches his personality though, because he was very frugal, a very frugal man. I mean, apparently he was so frugal that he didn't even have basic plumbing in the house like he should have. So if he's haunting the house and he feels that people are staying there, he's probably would feel better if there is money saying, "Hey, you're in my house. If you put a little money to stay here, I'm okay. If you don't, I don't know. It's just a thought." But apparently, if you put money on the table and staying in that room, he won't bother you. That's what I heard.
According to what I read, there are
That's all.
manifestations, and the entity of Andrew Borden is still seeing that his life was so brutally taken from him. Finds some comfort that the living are bringing things to light. Enjoys watching the activity in home and started answering EVP questions. He goes on about his business, what he used to do while he's alive. The entity of Mrs. Abby Borden, in the guest bedroom now called the John Morse Room, was discovered by a staff member like someone just laid on top of it 1 month after renovations and refurnishing the home was complete. Cries are heard from here as well, from that room. An older woman with gray hair was seen happily puttering about the house, busy with her affairs. If she couldn't enjoy her life while she was alive, now she can in the afterlife.
And there is something to what Linda said about that TV show, because I heard that a rumor, and of course it's all rumor, that Lizzie was actually a lesbian, and I heard that she had affairs with a couple of women and that they weren't approved of. So whatever that lady got in, what Linda talked about, it could have
I mean, she could be right. I don't
Maybe
know.
not necessarily between the two sisters, but maybe she was catching on something about, I don't know. It's just rumor.
It said there were ghosts of 2 young children, and here's other deaths in the house besides. Sometime in the home's history, 2 children drowned in the water cistern. People and children who tragically drown often stay in the world not ready to accept their death, but stay where they felt most comfortable. I want you guys to look at this picture. This is
Yeah.
the full picture of Andrew Borden laying hacked in the parlor
Okay, I'll
in the
try
living
to
room.
look at that.
There's a man in the very corner.
Okay.
Now, people say it's a spirit of Andrew Borden looking at his body because you can't see his feet. They're kind of invisible.
Do you have this posted on our website?
I haven't posted that yet.
Oh, that would be a good one to post. If people can handle looking at it. It's
but you
pretty
know what I
gruesome.
think it is? This is the early age of photography. I bet you that is someone on the crime scene taking photographs of the crime
Probably.
scene. And
Yeah.
he just happens to be caught in the picture.
Right.
And you only see a part of him because maybe he was moving.
Oh, could be. Yeah.
Or it's the spirit of Andrew Borden looking at... I would rather like to see a better picture of Andrew Borden to compare that to.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because
Well,
he's in the
you
far
know-
right corner.
Okay,
What's weird is their outfits kind of look very similar. is what
But
They do.
you know, back then the hairstyle and the mustaches and the suits,
They're
everybody
all
looked the same.
Exactly.
You know.
Yep. So there's been misty forms. Paranormal groups have gone there, investigated, captured EVPs. Someone captured an EVP of the word Maggie. Did
She
Lizzie?
called the maid that.
Yeah, that was her name.
No, her name was Bridget.
But Maggie was her nickname.
Yeah, she called the maid Maggie because they used to have a maid named Maggie. So she just kind of called her that.
When asked the question, "Did Lizzie kill you for your money?" a male voice answers, "You got that right."
Wow.
So maybe that's Andrew. We don't know.
Ooh.
But I actually found a few EVPs from other people. Now, they claim they said other things, and I did my thing to them, and I can tell you what I thought they said.
Have you ever been to her house yet?
No, not yet.
No, you haven't.
Nope, I want to go.
I would love to
I
go.
want to go too.
It'd be very cool to go.
Yes.
We should take a trip.
We should. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
So
Field
this... Exactly.
Field trip. Be great.
So this first EVP was captured in the house. It was a mother and her son were investigating, and they had left their camera in the living room, and he went outside to do something. She was in the kitchen. The camera started shaking and moving around violently and going
That's cool.
and shaking. And he has a video on YouTube of that. But then this is him explaining to his mother that, the camera moved. I wasn't in the house. You were in the kitchen by yourself. I don't know. I can't explain it. The camera just started moving. And then there's an EVP right after he explains this. The camera was moving.
Wow.
That I think it says you shouldn't move things.
Whoa.
So I'm going to try and play it as loud as I can.
Cool.
Let me turn this way up.
Turn the camera over towards the refrigerator to explain what happened and to see maybe if something else might happen. And all of a sudden, the camera just started rocking back and forth. I'm like, now my camera's moving. Video. See, if you had your video while I was still there.
And I'll repeat it again.
I heard that.
Turn the camera over towards the refrigerator to explain what happened and to see maybe if something else might happen. And all of a sudden, the camera just started rocking back and forth. I'm like, now my camera's moving. Video. See, if you had your video while I was still
Isolate
there.
it by itself.
Video.
Clean it up.
Video.
Slow it down.
Video.
Things. And then normal.
Video.
So that's interesting. It's right after his camera flipped out.
That is trippy.
And he thought it said, "You'll burn in hell."
No.
But this
No.
makes more sense to me. Like you shouldn't
Shouldn't
move,
move
things.
That sounds like that to me. Yeah.
It sounds like somebody who's mad and kind of stern.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
you shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
Well, and who knows? Maybe it was Mr. Borden.
Could be Mr. Borden.
Sounds
Yeah.
more like a woman's voice to me.
No, it didn't sound like a woman
To
at
me.
all.
Okay.
Sound like a man.
Okay. A man, woman.
A man, woman.
Somebody, a woman with a deep voice to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next one it's softer, and I think this one is a woman, and I think a man is on the very end. It's just there's no words before it. They left the cameras and stuff recording by themselves, so they're not even around it. You hear, "I should mention the house of mourning," and a man at the end goes, "Funerals." I should mention the house of mourning. Think about it. It would be a house of mourning
Oh yeah, totally.
after her parents died.
Right.
So, but it's funny that you hear that. I should mention the house of mourning, then funerals at the end. Look at that. Funerals.
Interesting.
Yeah, that one's different.
That's pretty cool.
Another one. It's just a woman. These two women are on a bed talking, investigating, and you hear, "Can I go down? Do you mind if I go downstairs for a minute?" And the other woman goes, "No, it's okay." And she does, and you hear a woman say, "The man was her first marriage." So obviously they're commenting on whatever they're talking about. The man was her first marriage.
Do you mind if I go downstairs for a second? Go ahead. I'm sorry, it's Do you mind if I go downstairs for a second? Go ahead. I'm sorry, it's
And isolated. talking about the children, whose children came from which marriage, and who was married to
I
who.
wonder if that was the maid, or it could be.
I don't know.
Interesting.
It could just be spirits who live in the house who have heard the story so much from the tour, they know it all.
That's true, and it just can't be just from the Borden family. It's also probably from
There's
past people
probably
who
spirits
lived
from
there.
other families too.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
who lived
Other
in the
families
house.
have lived in that house.
Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Besides them, yeah.
This last one is they're talking about who is the child named after the mother, and they're saying Elizabeth. They think the EVP says Elizabeth. I think it says Last Tenant. Last Tenant?
That's pretty cool.
And a little girl named after the mother. Anna? No. No, Iva or... Yeah, little girl named after the mother. And a little girl named after the mother. Anna? No. No, Iva or... Yeah, little girl named after the mother.
Last
I really
Tenant?
hear that.
Last Tenant.
That would make total sense. Last tenant.
Right?
Right.
So, I thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
I mean,
Very much.
there's a lot of video footage of people's entire paranormal investigations. Like, thank you for all 95 minutes of your investigation, but no one's gonna watch it.
Right.
6 views.
6 view. It's just like, it's hard to watch.
It is hard to watch. That's why you give a short 3-5 minute reel of the best stuff.
And that's
Right,
right. I mean, that's
exactly.
what a lot
Nobody
of the
has that kind of
paranormal
patience.
shows that do an overnight investigation and give you an hour. You know how much
An hour's
footage
nothing.
and hours you have to look and find and check it out. Oh,
Maybe that's why those shows seem so dramatic, because the investigation was a lot longer than the actual show, but they put all the dramatic parts all in one show. So
if they got anything.
That's
they,
true.
If they got anything,
Because
yeah.
sometimes they shoot for 2 or 3 days in the same location.
Right.
But they make it seem on TV like they waltzed in there for 3 hours.
I know, and they got all
captured
this
all
All this
evidence.
stuff, and that's why people get the wrong
And
idea.
you know, and sometimes
Yeah,
you can walk
exactly.
in and you can get an hour full of, I mean, like they said, ghosts don't show up, on time when you want them to. They
No.
just don't do that.
They don't perform on
No,
command.
they don't.
Darn, sometimes I thought we had an appointment. No, I'm just kidding.
I have an appointment with you.
Let's see. Lizzie's mistakes. This is interesting. Lizzie's version of what happened is being severely tested in the world and the afterlife world, where she seems to be stuck in her own hell, trying to figure out that to be sure that she got rid of all the evidence in the basement, becoming a burning obsession. Now that the living are proclaiming her guilt and telling how they think she did it, this person said they took the tour in 2010 and went through the scenario on how Lizzie killed her parents and was taken to each room. Experiencing horrific incidents, a huge life mistake, knowing some vital information about it, not doing the right thing, not having the character or courage to do so. These would be reasons why Lizzie might be hanging around the Borden house. Bridget, Maggie Sullivan, was a young Irish immigrant in her 20s when somehow had the funds to leave town on a maid's salary and relocate to Montana. What did Maggie know, and when did she know it? It seems that the Borden family and her maid Bridget Maggie Sullivan are still in residence. In the guest bedroom, okay, we already said that one. Cries are heard.
Right.
So I looked online on how much it costs to stay here. It's not cheap.
No.
Guess how much it costs a night to stay there?
Oh, let me see.
What would
to
you
do
think?
an overnight investigation. How many people?
No,
could-
just to stay there.
Just to
in
stay there.
one
For
room
one night?
For one night for
$250.
Okay, what are your guess?
Probably 300.
$375 is the lowest.
Whoa.
So, and then it goes up from there
Really? Why so much?
because everybody wants to stay there. It's the hot thing in town.
Can we get a discount?
You're gonna have to call them and ask that.
Go to
if we have you on our
hotel.com.
show as a guest,
Yes,
right?
can we get a
Can we get a discount?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if
it's a
you
good
get
excuse to me.
Very
so
good.
if you get a chance to stay overnight for $300, do you have the whole house to yourself?
Well, there's only a few rooms, so,
Right, so
I would think
maybe
if
3
you
rooms?
had 3 groups of people that were with you to investigate, you would have the whole house.
I would think you would, but
But
you know
you're
they
paying
probably,
$1,000 or more.
But they probably
by that
serve
point.
breakfast, a lot of amenities and stuff
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's a small, teeny house,
No, it's a small. I'm sure it is. Yeah.
which makes me wonder how nobody could hear anything about their parents' murder.
That's what I
upstairs
wonder. That's weird.
and downstairs.
Exactly.
I was thinking that when you were talking about the case in the beginning, I thought in such a small house, you're whacking somebody and you don't hear it.
Have you been to
Really?
the Whaling House in San Diego?
Yes, it's tiny,
It's tiny. Is it? I'm sure the house is about as tiny as that.
maybe even smaller than that. 'Cause
Maybe.
the Whaley House kind of goes back. Mm-hmm. But yeah, because you have the courtroom in the Whaley House,
Right.
And you have the living room,
Right.
the sitting parlor.
It's a teeny house.
Yeah.
It's a teeny
Yeah.
freaking house, and I've been in that house. And I'm pretty sure that Lizzie Borden's house was the same way. And with the maid and everything that she, hearing about the relationship of the family and everything, you can't hide.
Not
any-
a whole lot goes
You
on.
really can't hide yourself in there.
If someone was hacking someone above you in another apartment, would you not hear that?
Of course, I would hear it.
Someone would cry out. You'd hear something, struggle.
Maybe this the whole reason why
Nobody was
maybe
gagged.
Lizzie probably poisoned her mother and father probably that morning.
But they didn't
To
find
get 'em
poison in
sick?
the body, though.
No. They were so
Well, they said they
or
had
could have been
stomach aches
drugged
that morning,
that
so-
morning.
I thought it was from bad food.
No.
No,
They just
no,
said
no,
they
no.
had stomach aches. They didn't
Stomach
say why.
aches,
All
and
right.
and that's when she went to the store and she got some.
But they didn't sell it to her. They wouldn't sell it to
Oh,
her. But that
maybe she
doesn't
got it
mean she
somewhere
didn't find
else.
something else. Yeah.
And maybe she
Poison
went
them,
outside of town to
so
get
they
it
were
or something.
lethargic, sleepy,
Sleepy and everything, so it would be easier
To whack them.
to whack them.
because they wouldn't do all the kind of autopsies.
Yeah,
we
and
do
I'm sure
today.
after her father, took a
Toxicology.
walk.
The more
And
we
he was
talk about it,
informed
the
that-
more it just doesn't look good for her.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. No.
Sorry, Lizzie, but
It
things
just
aren't
doesn't
looking
look
great.
good.
Yeah, exactly.
And the fact that she, they said her story never collaborated. She was inconsistent.
And that's
with
why
the
that's why the
details.
jury had such a hard time, because there was a lot of inconsistency of evidence in her story.
And at the end of the day, they had no murder weapon
No.
at the time,
No.
and they had no evidence of
No.
that it was her.
Yeah.
So if you have no evidence leading you to a crime, other than someone said you were the only one in the house, well, that you knew of.
Right.
The maid said that. Maybe.
Well,
someone-
see, that's the whole thing. That the main focus is on the maid. When I saw a documentary about the Lizzie Borden case and everything, when the maid was talking about washing the windows and stuff, and stuff, she probably left one of the windows open, and maybe she had one of her people climb into
Yeah,
the window.
do the
into
deed.
It was an inside job.
So that's what I'm thinking. The maid could be your
Ma-
suspect.
it
Bring
could
someone in to
be,
do
yeah.
it, and she
Absolutely.
She was
miraculously,
one of the only people in the house.
and she miraculously got enough money to move to Montana on a maid's salary.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So
Hello.
That's a little suspect, I
Yeah.
think.
Totally.
So that wraps up The Haunting of Lizzie Borden. You've
Yep.
heard the details. Do you think it's true? Did you watch the A&E or Lifetime mini-series they did with Christina Ricci? And then they did like a limited
Yes.
series of the trial later.
Yes, I
It
did.
Never
was-
saw
it was
that.
kinda
I'd like
I
to
have.
see
It's
that.
pretty trippy.
It's, yeah.
Yeah.
And the conclusion is she
Hollywood
doesn't
style.
look good.
Yeah, it's very Hollywood style.
Very Hollywood.
All right, folks. So until next week, we'll see you once again in the Ecto Portal.
See you in a couple
Good
of
night.
weeks. Sleep soundly.